Some of the most unforgettable adventures are hidden inside a tiny handheld from 20 years ago. This isn't just nostalgia. These are 10 insanely good GBA RPGs that still hold up today. And honestly, some of them are better than modern releases. If you're ready for deep stories, addictive combat, and pixel art that hits harder than a bunch of AAA games, stick around, because by the end of this list, you'll want to play at least half of them. Guaranteed. Golden Sun isn't just one of the best GBA RPGs ever made. It's one of those games that made the handheld feel like a full-blown console. The story kicks off in the quiet village of Vale, where a group of young adepts, people born with the ability to control elemental powers called synergy, failed to protect a sacred relic after a mysterious storm. The battle system is turn-based, where each character can attack, defend, and use synergy, which is basically magic tied to elemental powers, but it's the Jin mechanics that elevate everything. You collect these elemental creatures throughout your journey, and they completely change how your party works. Assigning different Jins to your characters changes their stats, abilities, and even their class, giving you tons of room to experiment. In battle, you can use Jins to buff allies, debuff enemies, or unleash powerful summons that deal massive damage and look absolutely stunning for a GBA game. But using a Jinni also removes it from your character's setup temporarily. So there's a constant trade-off between building up for a summon and keeping your party strong in the moment. Another really cool aspect of Golden Sun is how synergy isn't just a battle mechanic, it's a core part of how you interact with the world. Throughout towns, caves, and even side quests, you're constantly finding new ways to use your abilities to uncover secrets or progress through areas that seemed blocked off at first. You can grow plants to reach rooftops, manipulate objects to access hidden rooms, and even read the minds of NPCs to reveal secret dialogue or useful clues. Visually, Golden Sun was a major achievement for the GBA. The environments are packed with detail, the spell effects are vibrant, and the summons look like something pulled straight from a home console. The soundtrack, composed by Motoi Sakuraba, adds even more depth to the experience. It's full of dramatic battle themes, emotional character motifs, and ambient tracks that make every location feel distinct and alive. And the writing? It's surprisingly mature. The characters have strong motivations, the world building is rich, and the story manages to balance lighthearted moments with more serious themes without ever feeling forced. Despite the hardware limitations, Golden Sun delivers a polished, complete RPG experience that still holds up today. Sword of Mana is one of those GBA gems that got completely overlooked by a lot of people, but it's absolutely worth going back to. It's a full-on action RPG with real-time combat, customizable characters, and a surprisingly emotional story. The game lets you choose between two different protagonists, each with their own perspective on the same journey, which gives the whole experience more depth than you'd expect from a handheld title. You move around freely on the battlefield, dodge enemy attacks, and time your strikes with different weapons like swords, flails, and axes. Each weapon has its own reach and special effects, and unlocking new ones opens up new ways to interact with enemies. There's also a charge attack system that rewards good timing and positioning, letting you unleash stronger moves when the moment's right. On top of that, magic is tied to spirits you collect along the way, and each one brings different elemental spells that can combo nicely with your melee attacks. And every time you gain a level, you choose one of 4 classes to focus your stat growth: warrior, monk, mage, or sage. And each one boosts different attributes like strength, agility, or magic power. And since you're not locked into one path, it's totally possible to mix and match across levels, creating a well-rounded build or going all in on a single style. Visually, Sword of Mana is one of the most polished games on the GBA. The sprite work is detailed and expressive, with vibrant environments that really pop despite the hardware limitations. What makes Sword of Mana even more interesting is that it's actually a complete reimagining of the original Game Boy title, Final Fantasy Adventure, which was the very first entry in the Mana series. Instead of just updating the visuals or adding a few quality-of-life features, The developers rebuilt the entire experience from the ground up, adding new characters, fleshing out the story, and giving both protagonists their own emotional arcs. Some fans of the original felt the new version changed too much, but for newcomers, it offers a deeper, more cinematic experience without losing the charm of the original concept. If you ever owned a GBA and didn't play Pokemon Fire Red or Leaf Green, you missed out on a cornerstone of handheld gaming. These remakes took the magic of the original Red and Blue, polished every corner, added fresh content, and made them feel brand new. The most noticeable upgrade is how clean everything feels. The sprites, colors, and animations were completely redone to match the visual style of Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, so it's way easier on the eyes than the old Game Boy versions. But it's not just a visual overhaul. The entire interface was modernized too. Menus respond faster, item management makes more sense, and training your team feels way less clunky. They also added running shoes, which sounds small, but it's a total game changer for exploration. And then there's the CV Islands, a whole new set of areas that expands the story beyond the Elite Four and even gives access to second-generation Pokemon. But one of the coolest things about Fire Red and Leaf Green is the inclusion of the Versus Seeker. This little item completely changes how you train and grind in the mid and late game. Instead of endlessly searching for wild Pokemon or relying on repetitive routes, the Versus Seeker lets you re-challenge certain trainers whenever you want, and their teams actually get stronger over time. It keeps the pacing tight and makes leveling feel way more enjoyable, especially when prepping for big fights like the Elite Four or optional post-game battles. It's a small mechanic, but it quietly fixes one of the most frustrating parts of the older games, the boring, grind-heavy progression. Even now, Fire Red and Leaf Green are some of the best ways to experience the Kanto region without feeling outdated. Final Fantasy Tactics Advance takes the deep, tactical gameplay of the original PlayStation classic and reshapes it into something more colorful, more accessible, but still packed with layers of strategy. It starts with a group of kids who get pulled into a dreamlike world, created from a magical book, where everything feels perfect. No bullying, no loss, no pain. But as they get deeper into this fantasy, the cracks start to show. It becomes a reflection of how people use escapism to run from real-life problems and how that comfort can eventually trap you. Here, combat happens on grid-based maps, where characters move in turns and each action, whether it's swinging a sword, casting a spell, or using a support skill, comes with its own hit chance, range, and potential consequences. Things like height advantage and direction matter a lot. Hitting someone from behind deals more damage and is harder to dodge, while archers and mages can use terrain to rain chaos from above. But what really sets this game apart is the law system. Every battle has a randomly assigned law, like banning certain weapon types, spells, or even healing, which forces you to constantly adapt your strategy. Break the law, and the in-game judge won't just give you a slap on the wrist. Your characters can lose privileges, miss out on rewards, or even get sent to jail. You build your party from a mix of races and jobs, and there's an insane amount of customization. With dozens of classes like Black Mages, Paladins, Ninjas, and Time Mages, every team feels unique. You're always tweaking your strategy, unlocking new skills, and finding combos that hit like a truck. Visually, Final Fantasy Tactics Advance is pure GBA magic. The pixel art is bright, clean, and packed with personality. Every animation feels snappy and alive, from the way a knight swings his sword to the sparkle of a spell being cast. And all of that is tied together by writing that's both simple and thoughtful, making the whole world feel consistent, emotionally grounded, and easy to get lost in. quick break here. If you're enjoying the video so far, drop a like and hit the comments with your favorite GBA RPGs, or anything I might have missed. Bonus points if you remind me of a game that made you cry or throw your GBA across the room. Seriously though, comments help feed the algorithm goblins and keep the channel alive with fresh content. Plus, I check and reply to every single one of them. And hey, if you're not subscribed yet, it's free, painless, and scientifically proven to make your backlog grow by 37%. Most people remember Kingdom Hearts for its flashy combat, giant keyblades, and that wild crossover between Final Fantasy and Disney, but Chains of Memories flipped everything upside down. Instead of real-time action, it introduced a card-based battle system that looked simple at first, but quickly demanded serious strategy. Each move you make in battle, whether it's a swing of your keyblade, casting a fire spell, or using an item, comes from the deck of cards you've built beforehand. Every card has a number, and if the enemy plays a higher one, your attack gets cancelled. So you're constantly managing not just what card to play, but when to play it. On top of that, there's a reload mechanic. Once you run out of cards, you have to pause and recharge your deck, which leaves you wide open if you don't time it right. You can also combine cards to pull off powerful slights, which are basically combo moves. But doing that means the first card used in the combo is removed from your deck for the rest of the fight. The story picked up right after Kingdom Hearts 1, with Sora entering a mysterious place called Castle Oblivion. The deeper he went, the more he lost his memories, and the more twisted the story became. It added layers to the lore that ended up being crucial for understanding future games in the series. And for a GBA title, it was surprisingly dark and emotional, especially as Sora struggled to hold on to who he was. And here's something a lot of players don't realize until they beat the main story. There's an entirely separate campaign where you play as Riku. It's shorter and more combat-focused, but it flips the whole card system on its head. Instead of building custom decks, Riku gets preset ones that change depending on the floor, which forces you to adapt to whatever the game throws at you. His story runs parallel to Sora's, but from a completely different perspective. Visually, the sprite work was top tier, and the cutscenes captured the same emotional weight of the main games, even on a tiny screen. For anyone who wants the full Kingdom Hearts experience, skipping this one is not an option. Lufia: The Ruins of Lore is one of those games that quietly slipped under the radar for most people, but it's a hidden gem that deserves way more love. It blends classic turn-based combat with a monster recruitment system that lets you add enemies to your team, kind of like a more strategic take on Pokemon. And even better, you can fuse monsters with your main characters to unlock powerful new forms and skills. Lufia also features a surprisingly deep class system that lets you mold your characters into exactly the kind of fighters you want. Instead of being stuck in fixed roles, you can switch between different job classes by collecting and equipping items called ancient texts. These texts unlock new abilities tied to specific classes like knights, monks, or mages, and over time your characters can master multiple roles, combining skills from different paths. And as you progress, you'll unlock special tools that let you interact with the environment in creative ways. Things like bombs to break walls, or items that reveal hidden paths and chests. It's a bit of a throwback to classic Zelda-style design, where exploration isn't just about walking from point A to B, but about paying attention to your surroundings and using the right tool at the right time. Even though Lufia: The Ruins of Lore plays a bit differently from the main games, it's actually part of the same timeline and serves as a spin-off that takes place between the first and second entries in the series. The story happens shortly after the events of the Fortress of Doom, and before Rise of the Sinistrals, acting like a narrative bridge. While it doesn't focus on the same main characters or the big Sinistral storyline, it still keeps the same universe, references familiar lore, and introduces a new cast with their own struggles and goals. If you've played the other games, you'll catch some callbacks and world-building details that tie it all together. But even if you haven't, the game stands on its own just fine and still gives that classic Lufia charm. If you've never played Fire Emblem on the GBA, you're seriously missing out on one of the best strategy RPGs ever made. The game takes place in the continent of Alibi, a land divided between rival kingdoms on the brink of war. You follow the journey of three main characters, Lyn, Eliwood, and Hector, each with their own story arcs that slowly come together as the conflict escalates. What's cool is how the game doesn't just throw you into a massive war without context. It starts small, showing Lyn's personal struggle to reclaim her rightful place in her tribe, and then gradually expands into a much bigger story involving ancient dragons, corrupted nobles, and a secretive cult trying to resurrect a forgotten evil. The combat is turn-based and plays out on grid-based maps, and each unit has a specific class, like knights, archers, mages, or swordmasters. And they all have strengths, weaknesses, and movement ranges that you need to master. One of the core mechanics is the weapon triangle. Swords beat axes, axes beat lances, and lances beat swords. It sounds simple, but using that system correctly can completely shift the tide of a battle. And if a unit dies, they're gone for the rest of the game, permanently. On top of that, terrain bonuses like forests or forts give extra defense, so learning how to use the map to your advantage is key to surviving the tougher chapters. And as your units fight side by side, they build bonds with each other. And that actually affects gameplay. The more two characters interact in battle, the better their support level gets, unlocking little dialogue scenes that reveal more of their personalities and backstories. But it's not just flavor text. Stronger support levels give stat boosts when those characters are near each other, which can be the difference between winning and losing in a close fight. Plus, some of these supports even hint at romantic endings or future alliances, depending on who you pair up. Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga is pure chaos in the best possible way. It's not just a fun RPG, it's a full-on comedy show with turn-based combat that keeps you fully engaged from start to finish. The combat system in Superstar Saga is where things get really clever. It's turn-based, but way more interactive than what you'd expect from a traditional RPG. You control both Mario and Luigi at the same time, each one mapped to a different button, so you're always actively participating. You have to time your button presses just right to deal extra damage or dodge incoming hits. And then there are the Bros attacks, special moves that combine both characters into flashy combos that deal big damage, but they also demand perfect timing and coordination. What's cool is that the game keeps mixing things up, adding new moves and enemies with patterns you actually need to learn and react to, almost like a mini-action game hidden inside a turn-based system. The game throws you into the Bean Kingdom, a place that's completely absurd in the best way. Talking villains, exaggerated animations, and some of the most self-aware writing Nintendo has ever approved. You've got scenes that feel straight out of a cartoon, dialogue that lands every punchline, and characters so over-the-top they stick in your memory for years. And what's wild is that none of it feels forced. The comedy blends seamlessly with the story and mechanics, making it feel like every joke has a purpose. What really makes Superstar Saga stand out, though, is how well it holds up. The pixel art is still gorgeous, the soundtrack is catchy as hell, and the pacing is sharp. It knows exactly when to throw in a puzzle, when to give you a breather, and when to crank up the chaos. Even with all the newer Mario RPGs out there, this one still feels unique. In Tactics Ogre, the Knight of Lotus, you follow Alphonse, a young knight from the powerful Lotus Empire, sent on a mission to investigate unrest on the island of Ovis. What starts as a simple assignment turns into a moral nightmare, as Alphonse begins to question his orders, uncover hidden truths about the Empire's role on the island, and face the consequences of war and loyalty. The combat system in Knight of Lotus is classic tactical RPG at its best. Battles take place on grid-based maps, where terrain, height, and positioning all play a huge role. Attacking from the side or back deals more damage, and elevation can affect both your attack range and accuracy. But where the game really shines is in its customization. Every unit in your army can be molded to fit your strategy. You assign classes that not only change how they fight, but also how they grow over time. Some classes focus on brute strength, others on agility or magic, and many require you to meet specific stat requirements or use rare items to unlock. On top of that, there's an elemental system that gives each character an affinity, like fire, water, wind, or earth, that subtly influences how they interact with enemies and spells. And the alignment system adds even more nuance, with characters falling into lawful, neutral, or chaotic paths that can affect their class options and narrative events. And because the story branches based on your decisions, your choices in and out of combat shape the world in real ways, with different endings, unique scenes, and even exclusive characters show up depending on what path you take. Even though Knight of Lodis came out on the GBA, it's not some random spin-off. It's actually a prequel to Tactics Ogre Let Us Cling Together, one of the most iconic tactical RPGs ever made. The events of Knight of Lodis happen years before the main story, and they help flesh out the political landscape of the Ogre battle universe. You get to see how the Lodis Empire operates from the inside, and how its actions on the island of Ovis tie into the bigger conflicts that explode later in the series. Released late in the Game Boy Advance's life, Castlevania Aria of Sorrow pushed the system to its limits and delivered an experience that still blows minds today. You play as Soma Cruz, a seemingly normal teenager who suddenly finds himself trapped inside Dracula's castle during a solar eclipse. The big twist is that Soma has the power of dominance, which lets him absorb the souls of defeated enemies and use their powers. Instead of just finding new gear or spells, you're constantly adapting by collecting over 100 unique souls, each with its own effect. Some turn you into a walking arsenal, others let you fly, summon demons, or manipulate the environment in clever ways. The possibilities for customizing your build are almost endless, and experimenting with different soul combinations becomes half the fun. The gameplay in Area of Sorrow is that perfect mix of tight platforming, responsive combat, and RPG depth. Movement feels smooth and precise, letting you dash, slide, double jump, and chain attacks with satisfying flow. The castle itself is massive and interconnected, encouraging backtracking and exploration as you gain new traversal abilities tied to the souls you collect. Combat is fast and flexible. You're constantly switching weapons, casting soul-based abilities, and reacting to enemy patterns in real time. There's a huge variety of weapons, from swords and spears to whips and even guns, each with different speeds, ranges, and animations. And because you're always gaining XP and leveling up, there's a real sense of progression that keeps you engaged. Visually, the game looks incredible for a handheld title. The sprite work is packed with detail, the animations are smooth, and the backgrounds manage to create a gothic atmosphere that feels way bigger than what the GBA should be capable of. And once you finish the story, there's even a secret mode that lets you play as another character, shifting the gameplay into more traditional Castlevania territory with a completely different moveset and no soul system. It's a brilliant bonus that gives the game even more replay value, and a perfect way to cap off one of the best GBA experiences ever made. Hey guys, should we turn this into another series on the channel? Then drop your favorite GBA games in the comments. I'm always looking for new stuff to play and maybe feature in future videos. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment to help your buddy Sage afford a decent lunch later.